Hey, everybody. I'm Szczepanek. Welcome back to Pianist Academy. Good to see so many of you here this morning and this evening. Jess, welcome. Nancy, welcome. Bedlington Groomer. Zayde, hey. And Sandy, good to see you. Vienna, hello. I see Pianist. You're kind of here, but you're in school. That's good. I'm glad you are. Isabel, welcome. C Drive, J2000. Good to see everybody. Hey, today's an open day. What are we talking about? Have you thought of any questions? Get thinking of some questions if you've got any about whatever. Theory, interpretation, performance, practicing, technique. Hey, Bjorn. Yeah. And, I have I had an idea, since this was a totally open session, that we could do something that I do in my members group, Next Level Pianist Academy. But a lot of the members I don't think actually, some of you do. I know a couple of you are here. Some of you go back and you watch our practice sessions and listen to my practice. But in the members group, I do practicing almost every week live for everybody, and I narrate the whole process. And I thought we could take something and we'll just pick it out and we can talk about the process. Like, instead of me just telling you what I'm going to do next, we can have a conversation about why I'm going to work on what I'm going to work on. Anyway, that's an idea. We don't have to talk about that. Could be anything you want. What do you all think? Yeah, Jess is out weeding. That is not as much fun as playing the piano. So I hope you finish with that soon, Jess. Vienna, can you learn theory on your own? Absolutely, yes. It's probably easier to learn theory on your own than it is to learn technique and interpretation of any instrument on your own. It's very logical. There might be some shortcuts that are helpful if you can talk to somebody who's been there and learned what you're working on. But there are so many great resources online. Oh, FYI. Don't use AI to help you learn theory because I've seen it get too many things wrong for people when they ask questions. Even like just what are the scale degrees in a certain scale, or what are the diatonic chords in a certain key. And there are times it'll mix something up. And if you use that as a reference, it might be 90% correct, but that 10%. No go. At least not yet. Sandy, okay. You said that would be great, the practicing stuff. Okay, cool. We could do something like that. Jess, you said you know that I like the why of things. Yeah. It'll be interactive. So, well, let's see. Before I continue on with that, Vienna, Beethoven, is that a request for something to practice? Beethoven. Bedlington Groomer, you say, always great to see any how to practice sessions. Yeah, sure. Isabel, which days and what times are the sessions in NLPA, Next Level Pianist Academy? That is, okay, every week we have a session on Tuesday. We have one type of session or another on Tuesday. That would be at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, my time, which is 4 p.m. London, 5 p.m. Paris, 6 p.m. I think Finland. So it's possible for lots and lots of people to be able to tune into those. So Tuesdays, 9 a.m., we have either it's called Let's Practice Together. We have a session like that, which is I practice with everybody, but we all get together and just practice. And we talk about what we're going to work on and what our goals are for the day. And then we go about our practicing for about 50 minutes. I record my whole session so people can review it if they want to. And it gets posted in that members group every week. And then we get back together for 5 minutes and talk about how it went. That's one session we have on Tuesdays. Another session we have on Tuesdays are workshops. We have one workshop a month on Tuesdays, and that's like a big group masterclass. They're supposed to be 2 hours. I almost always go 2.5 plus hours on those. They're a lot like what we do here on YouTube, except it's a lot easier to talk back and forth because we're all on Zoom together. So we can actually chat instead of having to type questions in a very small text field. And there are opportunities to play live, which is cool. I love it. So we have one of those on Tuesdays every month. And then yesterday, we had our practice audit for the month of July. That was also Tuesday, 9 o'clock. So those happen around various Tuesdays. Tuesday at 9 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time, there's always an event. Most of the rest of the month, events are on Fridays at 4 p.m. my time, which is 6 p.m. Eastern USA, 11 p.m. London, midnight Paris. Yeah, so that's a little late. But there are some people who tune in occasionally at midnight. But no, I realize that's a bit late. And on Fridays, we have a practice session or a workshop. One workshop a month is on Friday. And then our final day that we have events is on Saturday, one Saturday a month at 9 a.m. my time. So again, a time that works for lots and lots of people from North America and Europe. We do another workshop. So there's also a couple other types of sessions. We've got like a social hour session for everybody. There's a practice performance session. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the group. And I try to keep most things at a time that are possible to attend, like somewhere in normal hours for most people in North America and in Europe. So thanks for asking that, Isabel. Bjorn, you said, speaking of theory, you ordered like 10 books of sight reading and you can't wait for them to arrive. Okay, great. Hey, Priya, welcome. Vienna says ChatGPT is so dumb in theory. Yes. Vienna, what's the first note of Fur Elise? E. The E above, 2 octaves above middle C. Goes between E and D sharp. It's in the key of A minor. Serended. Is that how you say your screen name? You say you grew up learning some piano and you could read music, but 3 months ago, you properly started learning. You've made fast progress, but you want to maximize. What should you be careful of? That's a great question. And Priya, you have some warm-up exercise question. Great. And Zero, hello from a kidney stone operation. I'm glad you're recovering, Zero. Yeah. Bedlington Groomer says social hour and NLP is tomorrow. Yes. Yes, Zeta, you're right. It wouldn't have been E in Beethoven's time. I do not know the German. I do not know. I believe isn't B H? Vienna said H, but I thought B was H. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if you know. What were the German names of the keys? Let's go back and let me answer these couple questions. And depending on where we go, we can always jump into that practice thing if we want to. So, okay. So Saren's question from maximizing progress because you started learning properly recently. What should you be careful of? Can you let me know a little bit of how you're going about learning? Are you using a method book to learn, or are you following an exam board, kind of a structure like that? What are the resources that you're using as you're working on this? And I take it because of your question, you don't have a teacher you're working with, but maybe you do because you said properly started learning. So let me know that as well. And as you answer that question, I think a big thing that we want to nip right away, if possible, in your playing, in all of your playing, whether you're playing scales, warm-ups, repertoire, is preventing, usually it's just preventing fifth finger from flying away. That's the biggest problem I see often. So we don't want to see things that are like, that coming up if you're working on your C major scale, or, for example, if it's really bad, when you tuck your thumb under, maybe that happens. where 5 and 4 are really curled up and pulled up. That's a really common problem because we're trying to avoid playing the keys with playing a key that we don't intend to. And so sometimes we pull the fingers away that aren't in use in order to help prevent that from happening. But we really want to be sure that we aren't adding that tension in. And that's that kind, especially in a scale or in an arpeggio, wherever the thumb is tucking under in the right hand like this, it's really common for that movement to happen. We don't want that. Let's see, you said you're following ABRSM grade 3. Good. And you're working on a little sight reading, no teacher. You just don't want to have any problems because you're learning quite fast. Yeah, okay, good. So then same track as what we were just talking about. In your scale, I'll zoom in on this in a second. But practice just showing us we're playing a scale where can all of your fingers that aren't in use, can they stay in contact with the keys? All of the rest of you here, this is a great test for you as well. Doesn't have to be a fast tempo. With the left hand as well, of course. Even where that cross happens, look. Things just slide across. Look at how relaxed the hand is. It's so relaxed, we can flex the wrist. Everything's movable. It's not clenched. This doesn't look a whole lot different, but it feels different. It looks a little different. That's not. This is. Under a lot of tension, I should say. And when this crosses over, right, the hand's going to be doing this kind of thing. That's not good. That's a lot of tension. So we want to be sure that that kind of stuff doesn't creep in, especially if you don't have someone watching you. If you can't tell how it looks while you're playing or you have trouble kind of concentrating on it, put your phone or any kind of camera just right here. You can stand it up, you can record down the keyboard, and you can see everything that I just showed you, like from this angle. You can see that on your recording. So you can see the side of your hand in a way that you don't have as great of access to. But also, if you just use that tactile feedback of, are all the fingertips still in contact with the keys? And they're never lifting away as you play one. So for example, if I'm playing 3, 4, and 5, again to show you that, 4 and 5 don't go like that as you play one. They all stay in contact. That's the biggest thing I would look out for technically. Something that, if you're not working with a teacher, something that you might not think about is just how much deeper phrase and dynamic and overall musicality are in the repertoire that you're playing. And so don't just think about a dynamic marking or a phrase marking when you see one. That's the beginning. So see it, recognize it, know that it's there. But then ask yourself a different question. Like if you're playing a piece that is marked forte, this is easier than ABRSM 3, but I think that's marked forte, I believe. That's Schumann. Well, what does forte actually mean musically? How can we go deeper than the dynamic? And what does the dynamic mean? Hey, tell me, everybody here in the chat, tell me, what does forte actually mean? And Vienna says, ABRSM 3 is so impressive for a self-taught pianist. That's absolutely true. You're doing a great job. Hey, Rhodesy. Nancy, you said strong. Rhodesy said grandiose. Well, grandiose is one possible way of playing forte. Yes. Vienna, there are different fortes? Yes, there are. Forte is always, what's underneath that word is always context dependent. Zede, louder than mezzo forte. Yes, that's also true. Isabel says loud. Okay, great. Hey, a couple of you, Nancy and Jess, you work with me more often. You got the right answers. Forte, the literal translation of forte is strong. It's not loud, it's strong. That's a really important distinction. Strong, playing in a strong way might render a louder dynamic, but it's not the intent. The intent is to play more strongly. Great. Well, now, what is the difference between forte, playing this Schumann? There's one note that's wrong in there. What's the difference between the type of forte that is and maybe a forte in this Mozart? I'll let you have a chance to answer that. Z Spark. Hey, everybody. You say you didn't answer because you thought it was a trick question. Yeah. Rotzi, you say the mood of the two examples. Yeah, the mood is different. And that's always going to be different. Where a forte is marked in any piece, the mood is always going to be different. It's a different piece of music. We're in a different key. We're exploring different pitches. So there's always going to be a subtle difference, maybe more than a subtle difference in the intent behind the dynamic. And if we keep that in mind, it's going to change how we approach playing the first note or the phrase or lots and lots of things. Gal L, you say it's subjective. Yeah, it can be. And that's one of the things that makes different interpretations possible of the same piece. If we were all robots and we all played forte and we played with the same loudness, it would all sound the same. It's not that the loudness varies, it's that the intent underneath the dynamic varies from performer to performer. And that changes how the music sounds to us, the listener, in ways that are otherwise really difficult to describe. But we can hear the difference. We can tell the difference between Gilels and Argerich, for example. That's a big thing, I think, to keep in mind, especially if you're not working with a teacher, that it can be really easy to just play the repertoire that you're working on and kind of do a good job, follow every marking on the page. But music is deeper than that. The markings are like, as a composer, I can say the markings are just like scratching the edge of what the music is about. When I have to put a marking on a page, there are lots of times I wish I could write a whole lot more than a dynamic and a slur. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I give like expressive text directions, but then it becomes overwhelming on the page and you get words everywhere. And so you can't do that very often. You have to reserve that for only the most important moments. But yeah, all that to say, there's a lot that's underneath each dynamic mark in each phrase. Yeah, Rotzi, you say, isn't forte different for each composer when interpreting? I think the bass line can be different. Rotzi, I know you love Chopin. If we use Chopin as an example, a traditional or a traditional Chopin forte is not that loud. However, you don't hear most people play Chopin's music with a Chopin forte because it probably wouldn't fill the big concert halls. And so people play it much bigger most often. And it turns into more like a Rachmaninoff forte. So that's one, I think, big example where how the composer would have played and what he would have expected is different than what we usually hear today. But if let's say you're taking an audition or you're playing Chopin for an exam board or for a jury or for a competition, if you don't give a big dynamic that fills the hall, they're going to think you have a problem with your technique. So it's a catch-22. It's hard to know which way to actually go. Respect everything that we know about the composer or make a change on purpose that we know might be wrong, but it's for other reasons. Yeah, cool. So, Saren, I hope that helps you out. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions about that. Vienna, you had a related question. You said we can all tell the difference, except for me. As in, how do you make your ear better? Do more listening, Vienna. And not just putting it on in the background, but like, if you've got a piece that you're working on, find 2 or 3 interpretations of the piece and put it on and listen to just a page of it and write down what are the differences they hear. Start with the easier to perceive things, like, is the tempo different? How is the recording itself different? Do you feel closer to the piano or do you feel further away from the piano? Can you tell the difference is there a difference in dynamic? Is there a difference in color of the tone? Is one brighter? Is one warmer? Can you tell if it's from the pianist or from the piano itself that difference occurs? And then you can go deeper, of course, much, much deeper. But those are some good questions to help get you started. Okay. Great. Saren, I'm glad to hear that. There was a follow-up question from Isabel about what you just mentioned. Why should fingers stay on the keyboard with scales? So, Isabel, it's not that they have to. In fact, you'll see a lot of concert artists with their fingers not doing that. They might be hovering. But the difference is that in hovering, they're not under extreme tension. Usually, they're not under extreme tension. They have an ability to use all the fingers in any way they please. Some of the not touching might be due to rotation during specific passages. It might be due to being here, if I'm playing up on a black key and have a very strong position on it, the other 4 fingers might not be actually on the keys, even in a really relaxed position. However, when we're practicing, and especially if we're working on making sure that we are approaching the instrument in the healthiest way, and in the way that's most efficient and that's going to translate into better and better technique, that's going to help us play everything from louder to softer to faster to slower, everything. If you have the control to leave the fingers on the keys and still activate each one independently, you're working on finger independence because you're not using any finger except the one that's necessary, but you're doing it without the poor teaching from 100 years ago of lifting to achieve finger independence. We don't want to do that. We can achieve the same thing, keeping the fingers on the keys. Okay. It does that primary job of what we were talking about, where we're preventing tension, especially during the thumb tucks, from creeping into 4 and 5, which is often where they appear for most people. So if you can navigate a scale, let's go back to one I don't need any black keys on. If you can navigate one without that movement in 4 and 5, without excess movement that's in the opposite direction of playing, then we know our technique is moving in the right direction. Yeah. Yeah, Z-Spark, you're right. Oh, Saren, you said, are there any suggestions for where to find a lot of beginner sight reading material? If anybody has any. Oh, Zayde, Bartok, Mikrokosmos. Yes, that's true. That is good. I believe it's Paul Harris. Yeah. Paul Harris has a number of sight reading books that span lots and lots and lots of grade levels. Spelled the way you'd expect. Paul, P-A-U-L. Harris, H-A-R-R-I-S. So you can take a look at his materials. Those are good. And of course, Saren, if you're doing ABRSM, ABRSM has at least one book of sight reading examples for every level. Those are great to have on hand. You might even be able to find sight reading from previous years. ABRSM, I believe they update their syllabus every 2 years. So if you have the latest book, you could get the book from the previous exam prep, and then you could get the book from the one before that. And there should be different examples in each one. I don't know for sure if they recycle any, but I would expect them to have different examples from year to year. Okay. Great stuff. Priya had a question earlier. Basically, you said we should do warm-up exercises before every practice session. Are you correct? What do we all think about that? And Priya, what are you talking about when you say warm-up exercises? What are you doing? What do other people do for warm-ups? Do we need to warm up? Why do we warm up? What's the purpose of it? I'll come back to that question. We'll give everybody a chance to just chime in here. But I'm going to go through a couple of the more recent chats first, and then we'll come back to that. Nancy, you say Pianist Magazine has good string stuff. Okay. Or sight, maybe you mean sight reading? Or both. Yeah, that could be good, Pianist Magazine. Especially if you can check it out from the library for free. That's a great resource. Isabel, you say sight reading equals you use the score only 3 times in a row. I would say, truly, Isabel, once. Everything after the first is practice. It's not sight reading. Sight reading is only your first play through. So we want the first one to count. When I teach sight reading, I go through and we work on analysis in lots of different ways of the score before we play it, so that we're looking for patterns. We're looking for other things that we recognize. And at the beginning, we take as much time as we want to before we read something, and we find all of those things that we can recognize, and it becomes a little easier to play. And that's really the key to sight reading at more and more and more advanced levels, is even if you don't have a chance to look at the score ahead of time, as your eyes scan, you recognize all sorts of patterns that you're familiar with. And so you're really not reading a bunch of notes or individual notes at a time. You're reading big groups of things, and you're stringing them together as you go. So you take lots of information. Maybe think of it like, reading every word in a sentence or reading a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase might be 3 or 4 words, but often we see and we hear them and we recognize them as kind of one unit. Especially when we're fluent in the language. We see that structure, we know what it is, and it's just one thing. And reading a bar of music or a couple beats of music one time might be similar to that. Yes, Isabel, only one time. Because every time after that one time, in that one time, your brain has started to encode all of that information. The second time is not reading by sight anymore. It's getting better at practicing what you just played. Okay, so let's see. Z-Spark, we were talking about warm-ups, and you said 2 things maybe from warm-ups. A mental warm-up to direct your mind to the task. Good. And secondly, get your hands and blood flowing, just like stretching before playing a sport. Those are both good things. Yes. Zayde, you say you love playing octaves to warm up in both hands. Cool. Sandy, you say sometimes you warm up with known pieces or technical struggles. Usually just play the scales and arpeggios of pieces you're learning. and you may incorporate an etude. Good. Nancy. For Nancy, warm-up is 5-finger patterns, scales, and some stretches. Yeah, good. Those are all good things. So why do we warm up, right? I think Z-Spark was the closest to answering the why question. Hey, Restless Guitar. And there are two aspects to it, right? We want to get focused and centered on the task and not be preoccupied thinking about other things. The sooner we can get focused on playing music and making music and practicing, the more effective everything we do in practice is going to be, because we'll be less distracted. That's a great thing to work on in your warm-up. So a warm-up could include just breathing, closing your eyes and breathing, and trying to forget everything else that you just were thinking about or doing, because we just want to focus on where we are. That's part of warm-up. And yes, getting the blood flowing. Let's divide scales. A lot of people use scales and arpeggios and such, and etudes, like Sandy mentioned, to warm up. If we really want to make progress working on a scale or a tempo in a scale or an articulation, any one of those things, we shouldn't only play scales in our warm-up. So I think a lot of times people say, I'm going to warm up and I'll run through my scales and I've got a couple to practice and great, now I'm done with my scales. You haven't really made your scales better. You've used your scales to get the blood flowing and to maybe help focus you, but you haven't actually focused on the scale itself. The scale has just been a kind of rote thing that we go through that maybe we don't focus on as much as we could. That often happens if we do scales, arpeggios, etudes, etc., first and only first in practice, if we don't come back to them later. So, a great warm-up, if you want to talk about scales, a great warm-up might be play 2 or 3 scales in a variety of articulations that you already know really well. Maybe that's C major, D major, G major, something like that, in a variety of articulations. So, and a variety of speeds, maybe 2. But articulations like legato, like detached, like staccato, like accented. Okay, good. That's going to warm up the hands, and we're going to play through. We're going to use the hands in a number of ways that we will come across again in the repertoire soon. Same thing with arpeggios, right? However, if you've got a new scale that you need to learn and work on, or if you have some, and let's say you're working with your teacher, and they said, hey, our next job is to take our D major scale, and we've been playing it at 16th notes at, 80 beats per minute. Our next goal is to play that scale at 100 beats per minute at 16th notes. And so we've raised the bar. The time to work on that is not during your warm-up. So I think that's a good distinction to draw, that you should come back after you've warmed up, maybe after you've played some other repertoire, maybe just sometime later in your practice and say, hey, I've got a new goal for this scale, and it's just as important as the repertoire I'm working on, and I can't play it during warm-ups because I'm not warmed up enough to make progress on it. So in that case, come back, and then you can do some dedicated work for 5 minutes on that scale in the ways that that are going to push us toward that new goal. Yeah, Vienna said, could you just run all 12 scales for a warm-up, or 24 scales? Yep, you could. It's going to take a while. If you've got lots and lots of hours, you could do that. It's the same as, there's some people that really take the Hannon exercises at face value, and they read the instructions, and the book says, play through the entire book in one sitting. And I think a playthrough of the entire book should take an hour, and that's your warm-up. Well, for a lot of people, that hour is the amount of time you have to practice. So it's not a good idea to spend the whole time just playing Hannon. Even if you've got 3 hours to practice, I don't think spending a third of your time playing through Hannon is a good idea. We don't need that long to get warmed up. Okay. Let's talk about another aspect of warm-up, which is if you're not pushing your technique in passages and repertoire that you want to work on, you can jump right into your repertoire without playing anything else to warm up. So if you're not, it's the same as playing a sport, like that analogy was drawn earlier. If you're playing a sport and let's say the sport you're playing involves walking and not running or sprinting or something like that, right? If it's a very moderate pace and not a more extreme one, well, you can just jump right into playing. You don't have to warm up. Same thing in repertoire. If I were, like right now, I was working on Chopin's C-sharp minor posthumous nocturne yesterday with a student. So if I was going to work on not the really fast scales, but just the melodic part of this, I don't need to warm up before I work on this. Yeah, that's not pushing technique. If we were to jump to the end, where I've got that type of scale, I definitely want to be more warmed up for that. Because otherwise, if I'm working on getting warmed up while I practice that, then it's going to feel different. Because I do need a lot more control. And I do need a lot more ease of movement. And ease of movement, right? We get that ease of movement when the blood is moving to the muscles more rapidly. Mm-hmm. Sandy, you say sometimes to jump straight in if you're testing memorization from the previous session. That's true. Oh, here's another reason. Or if you're working for an exam. Yeah, you're right, Sandy. Yeah, so that's like a performance. If you're preparing for a performance, you probably won't be able to warm up before you walk out and play. Depends. I mean, I remember doing things... Even some competitions I was in where my warm-up was an hour before I had to go play. And all of the competitors had to maybe sit in the same room together and you couldn't go leave. And if you were first, hey, awesome, you got to play really close to your warm-up. And if you were last to play, you sat there and got cold for an hour. And that's just how it goes. Even if you're playing professionally, often your warm-up on stage will be at least 30 minutes before. You'll have to stop 30 minutes before the concert starts, sometimes more like 45 minutes to an hour before. And occasionally you might have a green room. If you're lucky, as a professional performer, you might have a green room to go and play and do a couple things in the meantime. But there's almost always still at least 10 or 15 minutes between playing your notes backstage and coming out to play. And that amount of time is enough to feel the difference in your fingers, especially when nerves are on edge. So for those reasons, similar to what Sandy said, if you're preparing to perform something or take an exam or play in a recital with your fellow peers of your teacher, it's great practice to just sit down cold and play without warming up, because it's going to simulate a lot more of what it's going to feel like to give that performance than the comfort of being home and being warmed up. Yeah. Gal L, you had a similar question. You say, is it better to use the beginning of the practice session when you're most focused to practice your piece and leave scales for the end? You know, there is something to that our focus can shift or we get tired across a practice session. So first off, be sure that you're not practicing, I would say, somewhere in the realm of 20 minutes per session to 60 minutes max before you take a break. The longer your session, the bigger your break should be. So Kaplinski from Juilliard recommends 40 to 45 minutes, one session. Take a break, 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back and do more. So that we're never just sitting there going over and over and over and over and over again. And I mean, even those students, Juilliard students, they're capable of sitting and being pretty darn focused for 3-4 hours at a time. they're still going to improve by limiting that practice length. So, Gal, your question, is it better to use the beginning of the practice session to practice your piece? It depends. It depends on what it is. If we're talking about something more technically demanding, I'd say no, depending on your progress. So, okay, if I was playing a Chopin etude and it was moderately well learned, I would not practice it at the beginning. I would put it maybe 20 or 30 minutes into a practice session if I was doing an hour. And then I'd spend the remainder of the practice session on that etude. If I was just learning the notes, or if I was like in the first week or two working on it, where the tempo is still pretty slow overall, and I'm still figuring out fingerings and I'm figuring out gesture, absolutely do it at the beginning. So the position is going to change depending on our experience with the piece and depending on how it challenges us. If I try to sit down and work on a Chopin etude without playing anything before it, it's going to be an even bigger challenge than it already is. That's why it's great to use that when you fully learned the piece, sit down and run it at the top. But if you haven't reached that level of experience with the piece, any piece that's technically challenging for you, I wouldn't put it at the beginning. I would put it 5 or 10 minutes in. So I think a great rule of thumb is do a little bit of easy stuff when you sit down just to get going. And that could be a couple scales that you know really well. Great. That warms you up. Or it could be something in repertoire that's really lyric or that's really beautiful, or a piece that you know really, really well that doesn't stretch us. Good. That's a great warm-up. And if you play a piece like that, it'll get you feeling and thinking musically right at the beginning of your practice too. And then soon after you start, 5 to 10 minutes in, jump to, I would say, the stuff that needs the most work. The stuff that you really, really, really need to focus on, that's going to require a lot of attention and a lot of listening. Yeah. So yes, do it earlier in practice, but not first. Oh, Rhodesy. Oh, you're gonna. Oh, you're playing Chopin's First Ballade. I'll look forward to hearing it, Rhodesy. Isabel said Glenn Gould warmed up by putting his hands in warm water. That can help. I mean, it certainly helps circulation, which is the point of doing the physical warm-up too. So, yeah, I think that could be a good thing. When I've played in cold environments, cold climates, I just keep gloves on, big gloves sometimes, until a couple minutes before I'm going to play. And the gloves, and I might do some little finger movements and stretches just to continue. A little bit of blood flow then gets amplified because I have gloves on, and that's nice. Vienna, you said, your other question is that when you get unfocused during practice, should you stop because you're not making progress, or should you continue because you want to build up your practice time? Okay. Here's a great tool to use. If you have a sheet of paper handy or another tablet or somewhere on your tablet, set a timer. Set a timer for like 5 minutes and put it on your phone. And your goal is to get through your timer without being interrupted and without having your thoughts drift. 5 minutes doesn't seem like a long time, but truly, I mean, if you're truly focused on only the task at hand, it's a long time. So we want to get to the timer ringing, and then we might take 30 seconds. We take 30 seconds and say, okay, breathe and get ready to focus again and do the same thing again for another 5 minutes. And I'm just going to use this sheet as an example for us. So I'm going to have, let's say, 2 columns here. Every time that I get through my 5-minute timer, all I'm going to do, there's no judgment from me or from you while you're practicing. Every time I'm through the 5-minute timer, I'm going to put a tick mark. And then for however many times I get through it, we just keep going until we're able to just count them all and see where we are. And every time, I said no judgment, but okay, those are our good ones. And these are the ones where we don't make it. Every time we don't get through those 5 minutes, all we need to do is recognize that we didn't, put a tick mark, restart the timer, and try again. And that simple act of saying, okay, I'm just going to count this. I got unfocused. And the act of picking up your pencil, your pen, whatever, writing that, reminding yourself, okay, let's just get focused again, restart the timer. Here we go. It's not a negative thing. It's just a recentering thing. So try something like that in your practice. That technique comes from the Pomodoro technique of being able to keep us focused for extended periods of time, and also help to teach us how to stay focused for longer. And it's all about just recognizing when we lost focus, marking it without judgment, and saying, okay, I'll try again. Let's see, Vienna, you had a question earlier about how long to practice in a day. That's a really open-ended question. It depends on what you're doing. We can come back to that in a minute. Rotzi, you said, is this practice method good? You do almost daily 1.5 hours of improv on a specific technique, and then some others for 30 minutes, some other practice for 30 minutes on a piece you're working on. Rotzi, it's pretty good. What you're missing is any sort of technique work. If you're improving on a specific technique, that's improving probably on a compositional technique, not a playing technique. And so you're not spending any time in your practice refining your approach to playing the notes in particular. And the more you can refine that approach, the easier lots of other stuff is going to be. And it takes time to do that. Daily time. So I would incorporate something like that, Rhodesy. An hour and a half of improv is a really long time. It might not be too long. But I hope that you divide it up into various goals. So if you're doing an hour and a half of improv, you should maybe be trying to improv in 6 or 8 styles in that time, not just kind of working on one. And that is your distribution of time means that your focus is not on playing the repertoire. It's on creating new music. That's fine. Just know that that is where your choice is leading you. 30 minutes, especially if you're playing music like Chopin's First Ballade, 30 minutes is not enough time daily to make enough progress to be able to play a piece like that to a high level, at a high standard. The piece itself is about 10 minutes. And so when you get to the point that you've learned the whole thing, you don't have really much time. You don't have much time to tackle lots and lots and lots of the bars. 30 minutes, I could spend 30 minutes alone on 8 bars of that piece and fill it with plenty of good work. And that's it, 8 bars. And how many more bars is the piece in total? 100 plus. I don't know how many it is, but it's a lot. So, if the ballade like that were on a program of mine that I was preparing, and if I was learning it from scratch, the ballade would get an hour a day alone. And then whatever else. Probably the coda would get 50 minutes a day, and the rest of the piece would get 10. Yeah, okay. Restless Guitar, say the preface to Scales for Guitar by Segovia, very famous player, says if you just practice scales for 2 hours a day, you're good to go. Yeah. I don't think we need to spend that long working on them. Truly. Even on guitar and in piano as well, there are other things that we need to get to in the repertoire. And if we spend so much time, something like that, a statement like that, it relates to similar piano teaching from 100 years ago, plus, where everybody said, oh, if you want to play the piano well, you need to be spending 6 to 8 hours a day practicing. 6, 8, 10 hours per day practicing. And then, okay, well, if you divide that out, spending 2 hours a day on scales is a pretty small portion of your time, because you're literally spending all day sitting with the instrument practicing. But research has proven that that amount of time is mostly a waste. For the vast majority of people, there might be a couple minds that exist in the world that can sit down and practice focused for 10 hours a day. It's not 99.9% of humans. 99% of us need breaks, and we need to step away, and we need to give the brain time to consolidate. That's what it's called when we take things out of kind of the short-term memory and put it into long-term memory. It takes time where we're not performing the action and we're not thinking about it for the brain to consolidate the information. We have to have breaks to do that. So this goes back to Vienna's question: how much time should we spend practicing per day? And I would say if you're a hobbyist where you want to have fun playing, you want to get a little bit better, you want to play some music that you really like, and you are striving to be, let's say, an intermediate to early advanced player, you could get by with about an hour, maybe an hour and a half a day. And that would be okay. If that's your goal, that's really all you need. It's about the journey, and we can't cram music learning. It doesn't matter what level you are. You can't cram it. It takes time. And so we're going to space that time out, and it'll be just fine. And I've seen plenty of people achieve a level like that with even 45 minutes a day. It's absolutely possible. The trouble is, as soon as we start going past repertoire that's that level, into early advanced, very advanced virtuosic repertoire, the demands of the repertoire and the length of the repertoire becomes such that the time we need to spend practicing goes up quite a bit. So if you strive to be an advanced player, be able to play advanced repertoire, what is an advanced piece? Maybe the Chopin C minor nocturne we looked at the last few times. Yeah, that's an advanced piece, especially because of the middle, or the C section, right? We have A, B, C. We get all sorts of repeated notes, and the texture is very, very big. It's difficult. That's an advanced piece. 2 to 2.5 hours a day. If you want to let's say if you want to concertize, maybe not play at the highest heights in the world, be the most elite pianist ever, but you want to be able to perform, maybe for fun or for others, and you want to be able to play at a professional level. Well, Ricardo, I'm putting the Liszt Sonata in virtuosic. I'm thinking of advanced, like RCM 9 and 10, not almost hardest ever. One of the most difficult ever pieces. But if you want to play at a professional level, I'd say, and you're giving concerts regularly, that amount of time goes up, I'd say, to 3-ish, 4-ish hours per day on a regular basis. And if you want to be one of the elites, your job is pretty much to practice. And you do need, I would say, 6 hours. Nobody should be practicing more than 6 hours a day. That's a lot, and it really pushes our mind to the limit. So it is possible, but if you're trying and you're striving to play at that level, you're not doing something else with your life. You're not going to work. You're not working a job. You're not running a business. You probably don't have a family, right? Or if you do, they're extremely patient with you because your job is to be at the piano across most working hours, most daylight hours. And when you're not at the piano, you should be resting so that you can go back to the piano. So like having a snack, eating, doing something that's not mentally taxing, and then you go back and practice more. That's very few people in the world. Rotzi said, isn't Chopin's music basically the threshold for virtuosity and good technique? The rest is extreme virtuosity. There's plenty of Chopin's music that doesn't require virtuosity to be able to play it, to be able to pull off a inspiring interpretation where the technique is in complete service of the music itself. Yeah, you need to be a virtuoso. But I mean, I probably could say that about any composition at any level, including the video I did about Burgmüller's Arabesque. I mean, the number of really, really, really poor performances that are out on YouTube, even by teachers of piano, it's staggering. And it becomes really obvious, even with a piece that's grade 2, where your technique is. Because we can really hear the difference between someone grade 2 playing that piece and someone who's a professional playing the same notes. How you play it, the ease of the execution, the ability to put every note exactly where it's supposed to be, you can tell, even with a piece that's, quote, that simple. Sandy, you say your daily aim is 3 hours, a little more a day, 7 days a week, plus mental practice and score analysis. Sandy, that's really cool. That's awesome. Good for you. See, Bjorn, you said you mean to practice 2 to 3 hours for 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Okay. That's really great. That's a really great amount of time to make some really nice progress. I know a lot of teachers that require a minimum, once you reach an intermediate level, it's required minimum 2 hours a day for 6 days a week, just to continue to have lessons, because the repertoire starts to become too difficult, and there's too much to work on when you don't have at least 2 hours. So, a lot of you know, because of my course on practicing, and I'm a big fan of the research in neuroscience, and I have definitely experienced playing 8 hours a day and wasting my time. And I've experienced making like huge gains when you know how to practice for 10 minutes at a time. You can do a tremendous amount in a short period if you really know how to use your time. So because of that, I'm really in favor of being on the shorter end of the hours. Because if you're really focused, you're going to get tired. I mean, if you're really focused, you shouldn't be able to practice more than about an hour in one sitting, because your brain should be fried. And if it's not fried, you're not thinking hard enough, you're not listening hard enough, you're not assessing your practice hard enough. Because every moment you should be scrutinizing every tiny nuance and trying to figure out what needs to change about the next moment, the next thing that you do. And that's taxing. It's taxing to do it for 10 minutes, let alone an hour. Vienna, you said there's this kid who's 14, has school and everything, and practices 11 hours a day. Mark my words, that kid won't be playing the piano in another couple of years. I've heard way too many stories like that. I was even around some kids like that when I was younger. And yeah, they'd win a lot of competitions, and then they'd turn 18 and they'd never play the piano again, ever. And yeah, they would not do anything musical with a career. Lots of them went into computer science, never to return, or at least for a decade, never to return to the piano. So don't do that. It's okay, the story I'm about to tell is might not be appropriate. But I'm going to tell it anyway because we're almost all adults here. I think I'm going to tell it anyway because the teacher told what I'm about to tell all of you to a 16-year-old student. So, and Ricardo, conclusion, you say, it's not the amount of time, it's how you use your time. It's all about strategy. The more advanced you become, the more strategic your practice needs to be. That's absolutely true. Yeah, that's a really concise, well-written comment, Ricardo. Thanks for that. Okay. I had a friend who I went to music festivals with for years over the summertime. And I'm not going to name the teacher. He was a private student of a famous teacher. And at the festivals, his teacher was one of the teachers that I'd study with among, there were 8 on the faculty. We'd have a lesson from each of them every single day. So you'd go around the faculty and get a lesson from a different person, totally different approach to playing, usually on the same repertoire because there's only so much you're working on at a time, every day for 4 weeks. It was great. It was an overwhelming amount of information, but it was amazing. I kept journals when I was there because it was just so hard to remember everything. Anyway, I was sitting in on my friend's lesson because all of the lessons were open to the students. You could go and just sit on anybody's. I don't even remember what he was playing, but the teacher worked with him for a little period of time. And he practiced a lot. Like, he was in the practice room all day, every day. He'd skip meals to practice because practicing was so important. And he was playing something that needed a lot of emotion and passion. And the teacher looked at him, 16, and said, "I don't want to hear this piece again until you get laid." And he, I think, expected that to happen in the next week or two because he expected it to be better at the next lesson. Now, what I took from that is not that extreme, but if all you do is practice, you don't experience anything in life. And all composition is based on experience that the composer had. And how can we hope to express anything if we don't have anything to draw on? I mean anything. Like, if you're sitting in the practice room all day and you're skipping meals, you don't even have the experience of eating. Eating great food can be so amazing if you just stop and think about it. But what about experiencing all sorts of other emotion? You need to have life. And if all you're doing is practicing, you're going to be an outstanding technician and a machine, and you're going to express nothing. And that's where my friend was. So, anyway. Yeah, Bjorn, yeah. Bjorn, I don't think you wish you had that teacher. I know way too many other stories. Cynthia, you said it sounds like something that you saw from Benjamin Zander. Well, Vienna said, yeah, but that advice obviously doesn't apply to you because you don't practice enough. Well, I guess that's good, Vienna. Yeah. IB, you said comparing yourself to others is how you become unhappy. You should focus on your own progress. That's really true. And it's one of the tricky things about the competition circuit. It's music, even in school, even in the conservatory, music is all about comparison to others. Yeah, that's a little sad. So IB, that's, yeah, great comment. And Sandy, yes, you said we're all unique individuals and we all have different reasons for spending our time at the piano. Absolutely. So, yeah, it's another reason why you shouldn't spend 10 hours a day practicing because you're not going to have any emotional experience to draw on to express the music that you're working so hard to be able to execute. Hey, Donna. Oh, right. Hey, Seth, I see you in the chat. Welcome. Sandy, you said every chunk of practice is certainly exhausting. Yes. Restless Guitar, what do I think of the book What Every Pianist Needs to Know About the Body by Thomas Mark? You know, I think I have a copy of that on my bookshelf, and I don't think I've ever read it. Maybe your chat will inspire me to pull it off because I'm pretty sure I've seen that book on my bookshelf. Yeah. Any other book recommendations? Just one in general about just playing the piano. And I think it can apply to classical pianists. It should. I wish it would apply to more classical pianists if we took time to experience music in a couple other genres. Bill Hilton wrote a book called something like What Your Piano Teacher Never Taught You. That's a good book. And there's a lot of stuff on just listening and understanding patterns and feeling music more. And because Bill Hilton is a more contemporary pianist, I don't think the book really talks about classical stuff, but the lessons in there and the concepts really apply to our work, as I know most of us here want to play classical, either entirely or mostly. So, Restless Guitar, you say that other book is mostly anatomy. Okay. I might know a significant amount of it just from other sources, but I should really check it out. Jess, you said, how can the music live if you don't? Absolutely. IB, you said your friend asked you why you play only Chopin nocturnes, and you told him that's what you like. That's a good enough reason. It's a good enough reason. IB, I would challenge you. If you want to expand your technique, maybe you can find some other pieces that help. You know, sometimes we don't know things that we really will like until we give them a try and experience them. So, yeah, that's my challenge to you. Can you find something else? Give it a try. Spend a little time. Give it a concerted effort. Spend a couple weeks or a month with something that's really different than your usual. And can you find why it's so great and why it's so beautiful and why it's good music? Seth said, play some Bach conventions. Yeah. Yes. Yes, Bach is great. Vienna said, Beethoven. Yes, that too. Okay. Were there any other questions that came in the meantime? Cynthia, earlier you said most top pianists don't have children or a family. And you said that just dawned on you. Yeah. Yeah. We have to choose our commitments and where we place our time and energy. And it takes time to have relationships, and relationships are really important. I do think there are more pianists today that do have relationships than previously, if you think about. His name escapes me now. Does anyone remember the pianist, Ricardo, if you're here, you know the answer to this, who would have his meals slid under the door by his wife, who practiced Richter, practiced like 12 plus hours a day. Yeah, wouldn't stop really even to eat. Yeah. Hey, Restless Guitar, thanks. You found the title to that book, How to Really Play the Piano, The Stuff Your Teacher Never Taught You by Bill Hilton. Yep, that's the one. Rhodesy, that's great that you love other genres and you're listening to other stuff. That's really cool. Cynthia, you say you have a hard time translating moods and abstract ideas into music and developing a point of view. Yeah. Yeah, Cynthia, that's sometimes in order to give enough focus to the feeling we're trying to give the music we're playing, we have to know something so well, a passage at least, or a part of a piece. We have to know it so well that we do not need to think at all about the technique we're using to play it. We don't need to think at all about the notes we need to play. We don't need to think about the memorization, etc. All of it is like that. We'll call that foundational work. It's all so deep. Or if it's a new piece, the understanding is so deep that we can build that foundation quickly, like in a matter of repetitions in minutes in a day rather than days and weeks. That we can put that then out of our mind and we can focus entirely on just the mood we're trying to create and the tone we're trying to project. And yeah, I do a lot of thinking in my own playing and a lot of teaching of building scenes and conveying emotion in our playing. And just the act of thinking about what you're trying to convey changes our approach. Often. It changes our approach to the point where there's a sonic difference. But relatively little of our conscious mind can go to the act of playing when we do that. IB, you say, do you have any recommendations for very expressive music like Chopin nocturnes? Well, take some nocturnes from other composers. There's the Field nocturnes. Oh, the Respighi nocturne is amazing. Scriabin's Prelude and Nocturne for left hand only. Amazing. There might be some middle movements of Beethoven, Mozart that are really, really nice and lyric. Rachmaninoff's D major Prelude. Really, really beautiful. It's Opus 23. I think it's number 4. Yeah. Oh, there's of course a Debussy. Debussy's great. Ravel has a very different language. If you can play some of his stuff that's not as note-y, you'll just build some really gorgeous harmonies. Mompu, that's the composer I'm trying to think of. I've not played any of Mompu's music, but there's a lot of really beautiful and lyric stuff that he wrote. I believe his name is spelled M-O-M-P-U. I think I can find that relatively quickly. No, not that. M-O-M-P-O-U. Frederick Mompu. Yeah, thanks, Restless Guitar. I just saw your comment. Zayde, is that Kirchlin? Is that how you say that? I'm not familiar with their works. Awesome. Thanks, Restless Guitar, for that recommendation. Zayde, you say E flat minor Bach. Okay, from the Well-Tempered Clavier. Yeah, well, I think if someone likes Chopin, I don't know if they're going to love playing that, but great. Bjorn, okay, you asked, what do I think is the most challenging obstacle for a piano student from any level? I think that would have to be learning to be free enough to be able to express something. And that really goes all the way back to one of the first things we talked about today with the reading dynamics and articulations and whatever's on the score and going deeper. But there needs to be an allowance that we give ourselves, because especially if you're taking music from a teacher, there's a lot of do this, do this, do this, follow this rule and do this. And everything is, there are lots and lots and lots of rules, and they're all important. Same thing like when we talked about playing forte in Chopin shouldn't be like playing forte in Rachmaninoff. They should sound different. They should have a different meaning. They should have a different tone. But even with extensive knowledge, in order to really express something in music, we have to let go. Ricardo, you said not to overthink. Yeah, I agree with that. When I'm teaching, something that has been occurring to me more and more often is how when I play, and I'm trying to figure this out, if I'm totally honest, I'm trying to figure out where the bridge across this river happens, because when I play, I'm rarely thinking about notes, rhythm. I mean, it happens, especially when I'm learning something. Sure, it's in there, but my focus is never on that. It's and even when I'm still working on a piece and it's nowhere near ready for performance, the majority of the time, focus seems to be split between, there are some passages that need some technical work. Okay, and I have to like woodshed, and I have to do the work in order to be able to execute them so that I can say something. But then the other half of the time, it's, what can I say with this phrase? And how can I be musical? Or what am I expressing? And a lot of times I don't even ask myself that question. I just sit down and and in the act of playing, I'm just trying to impart something, some part of life, soul, experience. I'm trying to put it in the notes, even when the notes aren't that well learned. And when I do that, I'm not thinking about every motion the fingers make, and I'm not thinking about every note that I'm playing. I'm taking a step back, and I'm relying on the work I've done to be there, and I'm trusting it to be there. And I think that's, I don't see students very often learn what that feels like. Even at really high levels, there are a lot of people that go into intense piano study that are, they're kind of people pleasers. They want to make their parents proud, and they want to make their teacher proud, and they want to listen to everything, and they're very disciplined. And so, like Bjorn, you say consistency and discipline. So I know lots of people that have consistency and discipline and still don't say much when they play. And I think it's because they're too involved in getting it right. The mind is too preoccupied with playing everything just so and just the way it's supposed to be that music never gets made. It's just a lot of notes. That might sound pretty good, but it's not deeper. So, who asked this question? Bjorn. The most challenging obstacle is getting out of your own way and knowing when, maybe even every day, having dedicated time to making music, not working on playing something correctly. Yeah. If I'm really honest, I don't think I started to cross that bridge until after my degrees in piano were finished. I was good. I connected the dots really well. I followed my teacher's advice. I had some nice success in competitions. I got a record deal. Lots of good things happened. But I don't really feel like I made music, and I made music like speak to someone's soul for another 5-10 years after I was done with all that. And truly it came from practice not being all about getting it right. So Vienna, you said, wow, so it's really hard to do it. I don't think it has to be. I think, and I hope I can be a teacher that promotes this type of culture, that, you know, there's a time to be yourself when you play. There's a time to learn the traditions so that, you know, when we are ourselves, we're still playing Bach and we're still playing Beethoven, or we're respecting them. There's a time for that. But there's also a time to just say, I'm going to play some music. And there are no rules. And over lots of time, I think the rules become such a part of us that we don't think about them as rules anymore. We just say, hey, I'm playing Beethoven. And I know Beethoven's supposed to be like da 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 da. And I want to play him the way he would have played, or the way he would approve of. But I know that I have lots of wiggle room inside those rules. And so you get to the point where whatever rules you know, let's say this today. You know, whatever rules you know, great. Obey them. Practice them. Work on them hard. Let them become like an instinct for you. But then always take time every day to just make music and to listen to how beautiful it is. When you play, it is beautiful. The beauty is in there. And the more you listen to it, guess what? The more beautiful it's going to become. IB, you say when you listen to a recording, if you don't hear emotional playing, you lose interest. You'd rather hear mistakes than a robot playing. Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. I mean, I don't want to hear a million mistakes. I still want to hear the right piece. I want to hear the piece. So there has to be some limit. People often, so I have a couple of students that quote, Beethoven back to me about mistakes. I can't remember the quote offhand. I'm sure one of you can write it in the chat. And, I chuckle because it's, you can't make mistakes every bar. You're not playing the piece of music that the composer wrote. That's too many. But, something that slips here and there or a couple times, whatever, I can forgive that. But yeah, if you're playing something wrong all the time, we need to fix that. So there's a balance. What Beethoven said didn't mean you can just willy-nilly like play anything. Just meant a mistake or a couple doesn't ruin a performance. In fact, just like IB, just like what you said, it's much worse to play perfectly note-wise and have said nothing. It's much worse to do that than to miss some things and play with great intention and move people. Yeah, Sandy, that's a great way to think about it. You said playing music is a privilege. It really is. And take a minute and just like reflect on that every time you get to practice. That's why 6 months ago, 12 months ago, I can't remember. I thought somebody asked me on one of these streams what my my favorite part of the day is or something. And I said practicing. I love practicing. There is nothing I would rather be doing than practicing. And it's just amazing. I wish I had more time to practice. Oh, let's see. And Bjorn, you say you also like to add some creativity. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bjorn, you're kind of saying like, play the score, but then, change up the style. That's great. Experiment with some other things. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and good, Bjorn. I just read about the short. Yeah. Vienna said, you hate practicing. Gal L, you said, you need to have good control of technique so you can focus on expression, right? Don't let chasing perfection stop you from ever expressing something. It's much better. Technique is always going to be in progress. I think you could ask any, even professional, even the greatest pianists in the world, I think you could ask anybody, have they reached the pinnacle of technical prowess? Ask Yuja that. She would probably say no. We all looking at her might say, absolutely yes, it's amazing. Whoa. But when we are in a position like that, there's always another place to strive for technically. And we can't let that get in the way of expressing something. So, yeah, we have to balance it. Know that there's always going to be time to make it better, to make your technique better, to be able to play something more fluidly, to be able to be more efficient through your gesture or through a scale or whatever it is that's in the middle of a passage. There's always going to be a better way for all of us. That includes me. That can't stop us from expressing something today, even if we're not there yet. Even if none of us are there yet. None of us are where we're going to be next year with our technique. And that's okay. So work on it. But remember to always try to express something. Always be musical. Sandy, you said practicing makes you feel good and amazing. You can make such sounds. Yeah. I think practicing can do that for everybody. Yeah. Okay, Vienna, you've asked twice. You said you hate practicing, and then you said, how does someone not hate practicing? Oh. Vienna, every time that we sit down and we practice something, we are making art. Every moment that we're sitting here, we're making art because the art happens when the music is played, even if we're just working on it. And I think that perspective, if you can just, you're bringing music to life. Every moment that you sit and you work on something, you don't have to be performing it to bring it to life. You're just playing notes and you're working on it. And that's really amazing. It's also just being able to sit and just listen and hear the sound. It's such an enjoyable experience. Maybe this goes back to what we were just talking about, Vienna, that if all you're focused on is technique, and if all you're focused on is obeying the rules and playing the right stuff, you might not be really listening to what you're playing. And I think that listening, the more we can do it across our practice, even while we're working on technical things, we still are engaged with listening. The more you listen, the more enjoyable it becomes. Because even dissonance is beautiful. If we just take a moment to perceive it. IB, you said there's nothing worse than practicing a passage for 30 times and still making a mistake later. So IB, I have another challenge for you. There's nothing better than practicing a passage 30 times and finding a mistake later. Because when you find that mistake after all that work, that's an opportunity. And instead of being frustrated by it, that's an opportunity for you to say, I missed that, which means I didn't do something I should have done the last 30 reps. There was something I missed. And now that I heard the mistake, I have an opportunity to go back and change how I practiced it so that mistake doesn't happen next time. So every time we make a mistake, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to not be frustrated and to practice not being frustrated. I strive when I practice to eliminate problems, and then to hopefully eliminate them from ever returning. Does it work 100% of the time? No. I've got a good success rate. But that doesn't mean I work on something and I work on something and I work on something and I come back 30 minutes later, and there's a problem. Maybe there's a problem with what I was just working on. Maybe it's in the same passage, but it's a different problem that I wasn't aware of. Regardless, I just say, okay, well, if I have time right now, I can address that and I can do a couple different things than what I just did, and they'll pay off. And if I don't have time, I make a mental note and say, the next time I'm coming into practice, I'm going to work on that spot because I didn't like how I left it. Yeah. Hey, Jerome. Jerome, you ask, can you learn technique self-taught with just YouTube? You've been taught with a teacher from beginner till grade 7, okay, and you can play the easier nocturnes, okay, but you realized you haven't been taught proper technique, even by your teacher. Okay, so Jerome, I have so many thoughts spinning in my mind. I'm a little upset with your teacher that you had a teacher for at least a few years, if not many years, and you still haven't been taught proper technique. That's not your fault. Your teacher should have been working with you on that. Okay, so I am sorry that you've had that experience. Secondly, can you learn technique if you're self-taught with just YouTube? That's really difficult. There's also, if you watch enough YouTube, you're going to see that there are a variety of different approaches to playing the piano. My approach is greatly influenced by Taubman technique. And so I approach things in that direction. There are others that have very different styles of how they have been trained to approach the keyboard. And, at some point, experiencing lots of different sides is really valuable. But when you're building a foundation, you don't want that. because it'll seem like there's a lot of conflicting information. Like, do this with your wrist. And then another school of thought says, do the opposite. Well, which one do you do? They're both right. But one is going to work more cleanly with a certain approach than the other. Okay, so all that to say, Jerome, if you are trying to work on technique, I would stick with just a couple people on YouTube that are good, and a couple approaches. And don't try to pull technique from all over the place, because I think it'll become more confusing. 1. 2, if you're working with you on YouTube and you're self-taught, record your practice all the time, video record it all the time, so that you can watch what you're doing. Because Vienna says, me and my videos. Well, thanks, Vienna. Jerome, by the way, you said this is your first time here. We, on a lot of these live streams, I take video submissions from students. We didn't have any today, but if you'd like to send in a video, I am happy to give feedback on exactly what it is you're playing and how you look when you play. It's kind of treated like a masterclass. It's totally free. I do these live streams about twice a month, almost every 2 weeks. And so you'd be absolutely welcome to send something in and get some feedback from a real teacher. Okay, so video record yourself all the time and look back at what you're doing and try to compare what you're doing to other recordings you see online. If you can find angles and you can watch how people are using the playing mechanism, which is really the whole body, as we play. There is a certain amount of technique that has to be self-discovered. It doesn't matter who the teacher is and what approaches you're told to take. You have to take the information, even working in person in lessons, you have to take the information and figure out how to internalize it and make it your own and how you really understand it. So that's always going to be a thing, whether you have a teacher or don't. But if you don't have a teacher, it's a lot more difficult to make the connections. So that's why use all the tools that you have and limit the people you're listening to so that the advice you're taking is from a single, or at least it's from a school of thought, even if the teacher is pulling from lots of different places. It's from a school of thought that works when it's all put together. And in time, we can learn how to combine more and more things. So IB, that's good advice. You say your advice for self-taught is remember to play free of tension. Great advice, except if you don't have a teacher, how do you know if you're actually free of tension? That's the really hard question to answer, because this reminds me of a post I saw a pianist on Facebook make in a couple groups. And they said in their post that they were tension-free. They felt like nothing ever hurts, nothing feels tense. And their playing was all sorts of claw and extended fingers. It looked very poor technique, which means it was their body awareness was not such that they even understood what tension was. And so their conception of their playing was that they didn't need to work on technique. They didn't need to look at tension, videos on tension, or how to let go of it, because they didn't have any in the first place. And that's the trouble. So, Jerome, fully self-taught, record yourself all the time and watch back and be really analytical about what you see and compare it to some pianists that you really respect. And secondly, send a video in here and we can work together. Thirdly, hey, this is not directed solely at you, Jerome, but it's a great opportunity. Join the Next Level Pianist Academy group. There's a link down below in the description. We meet like 10 times a month. It's only $47 a month for, 20 hours of contact time with me. It's an incredible amount of time for like almost no money. So anyway, you could think about joining the group. We do stuff all the time. Okay. Day, you said you have to be so aware during practice, not just playing notes. You have to be aware of everything. Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Gal, earlier you said, yeah, Jerome, absolutely. My pleasure. Cheers. Gal, you said what's more frustrating are inconsistent mistakes. We went backward talking about mistakes. I get that. Those can be frustrating, but there's also a reason that they happen, even when they're inconsistent. Inconsistency comes from two places, usually. Not enough. Truly, we don't know the bar as well as we thought we did, or that particular passage we don't know as well as we thought we did. And when the mistake pops in, it's because there was a little gap in something that we missed in practice. So it's an opportunity to go back and try to fill the gap in. Secondly, it's often caused by a lapse in focus as we play. And so when those little mistakes pop in, it's because we're not fully 100% present with the music that we're making. Usually there's a little distraction, or there's something happens, or we're thinking about the wrong thing. So often, even inconsistencies, there are ways to address them. Depending on what it is, if it's a miss in the bar, just going back and doing blocked practice is great for that. If it's a lapse in focus, doing interleaved practice is great to tackle that, because interleaved practice really requires us to focus. We get stopped all the time and we have to jump around all the time to different parts of our piece. The jumping keeps us really focused, and hopefully on just short segments. And Vienna, you said, what's more frustrating is when you can't even hear what you're doing wrong, and even when you can't hear improvement. Vienna, it's a growing point. The fact that you're chasing something to be better, that you know it can be better, and you recognize you're not able to perceive it yet, that's really actually good and really healthy. So congratulations on that. I know a lot of people that just say like, oh, that was really nice. That was beautiful. And it sucked. We don't want to do that, because then, we are not perceiving what needs to be worked on. So Vienna, I think, again, who asked? Faze, you asked, do you record on your phone? Yeah, that's exactly the right thing to do. So when you're playing, maybe when you're playing, you can't hear what's going wrong, or you can't hear what needs to be connected better, or the phrase that needs to be changed, or etc. But when you record on your phone and you're not actively engaged in the process of playing, you get a much greater sense about what's happening. So when you record on your phone, if you don't, do it. And when you do, then reflect back on what happened and what does it sound like. I would say, other than a teacher, the next best teachers are recordings of yourself that you listen back to. Vienna, you said when you record on your phone, it just sounds crazy harsh. Then invest in a little bit nicer microphone. So, something, Vienna, like a Blue Yeti, it's a USB mic. You can probably get a version that plugs into your phone. Yeah, it's $100. Get something like that, because you're really active in making music, and you're trying to make really great music. So, and make that minor investment, because it's going to last you years and years and years. Make that investment that will allow you to hear so much more in what you're doing, so that you can reflect on it. Great. Do we have any other questions? Do we have any others? We could still take 15 minutes and talk a little bit about practicing, with an example like we started the day with. I know a couple of you were interested in actually having that happen. We could do something like that. Oh, Restless Guitar, you said if you had a few questions. Could you post them again? Because I found one. Okay. You say how to fix an already memorized error. A single wrong note which didn't sound so obviously wrong until being noticed, or a missed note like played a single note instead of an octave or a chord. Let's answer that question, Restless Guitar. And then maybe we have 10 minutes to do a little bit of practicing Bennington Groomer. Let's take something straightforward. So I still have this piece pulled up. Let's just look at the first two bars. And let's say we forgot. Well, let's see. Let's keep it fairly simple, but we're going to pretend it's memorized. Let's say we forgot to hold that dotted quarter note. And we discover later, because this should be pedal, off, pedal, pedal, off, that we need that C sharp ringing. Our teacher tells us something like that. And we've been playing instead of. First, do we hear the difference between no C sharp and with the C sharp held? I emphasize it a little more to bring it out. Okay, let's say we forgot that. It's memorized. We need to work on how do we build a new layer of memory, or how do we change what happened? The perfect method to tackle this is it's being very reflective every repetition on both on what we missed and what we're changing. So, and ironically, we often we talk about how we want to limit the number of bad repetitions. We want to limit the number of repetitions wrong so that we can overwrite the correct thing, right? However, think about it this way. We have a path that we've walked. We're out walking and it's wintertime and it's snowy. We have a path that we've walked, and that path that we've walked is very obvious. It's been trampled. There's maybe even a sign. There's a fork in the road. There's a sign that says, go this way. And so every time we get to a passage, especially memorized, we follow the path we've taken. That's what our brain does. It always follows the path taken. If all you do is start to have a different path, guess what's going to happen? You get a fork in the road, and you have one path that you've taken often, and then you start to build another path. And what happens? You trample the new path. This path is still trampled. And so the more you do practice like that, the more you get to the fork in the road, and now you're presented with a question. Instead of knowing the direction to go, you get there and you get confused, because now you see two possible ways that have both been heavily practiced. So what we need to do is the path that we don't want to walk down, we have to build something that tells us, don't go that way. That's not the way. We need to walk this other way. We need to follow a different path. So this process, we need the music to see these two bars. This different process is, first, we're going to see and walk part of the wrong path, except while we do it, we're going to reflect on exactly why it's not right. So be really specific. In this case, my right hand thumb let go of C sharp, and my wrist pulled up as I let go of C sharp. Okay, now we've got those two things. Let's also listen to the sound of it, and we could say, I'm missing the resonance of that pitch across the pedal change. There are three things that are wrong now, and so we're starting to build a sign that says, don't go that way. So when you're working on your passage that you've missed something, come up with really, really detailed reflection on what it is that you missed. And don't just gloss over it. Tell yourself this and this and this and this. Be really detailed. So we're actively reflecting deeply. Okay, now we're going to do it the right way, the way we intend to rewrite. And what's the difference? Let's take those 3 points and create opposites. My thumb is still down on C sharp. My wrist gesture stayed low. Yeah, and also I can hear that resonance across the pedal change. Okay, now that's one time. That's one repetition. One repetition is one of the old way and one of the new way. Let's do it again. The old way, do it wrong on purpose. I let go of C sharp, the wrist comes up, I'm missing the resonance. Tell yourself all the stuff over again. Then do it the way you intend to change it. Hold with thumb. Wrist stays lower. I hear the resonance of the note. Do that process and actually say the stuff out loud to yourself. Do that process, say 5 times. By the time you've gone through 5, where you recognize over and over again what's wrong with the first path and what's right about the second path, you've done a lot of going the new direction. So we're creating a new neural pathway, right? Literally a new neural pathway. But we're also being really attentive to what's wrong about the old path. So that when we come here in the future, in our forest, our metaphorical forest, we now have pushed snow over our old path, and we've put a sign up that says, "Don't go this way, road closed." Something like that. So when we get to the path, it's much easier to go the correct direction, the new direction. So ironically, it's not about just practicing the correct way over and over and over and over and over again. We also have to overwrite. We have to actively do something to say that what we did before was wrong and we don't want to go there again. So that's where this process comes in handy. And yeah, Restless Guitar, you said, what are your thoughts on having multiple teachers at the same time? Generally pretty depends on your level. For beginner and intermediate students, I really wouldn't have multiple teachers at the same time. We want to follow one way, and hopefully they're a really good teacher, but we don't want to get confused. There are so many different, like we talked about with the self-teaching stuff, there are so many different approaches. There will be time to explore lots of different approaches later as we become more and more developed as a musician. But at the beginning, that's not a good time because it's going to be really, really confusing, and it's going to promote one of the problems that we talked about today, which is over-analysis of everything. So we don't want that. But it is really great to have multiple teachers at the same time later on. If I had a student like this currently, I wouldn't want them to have a teacher with a difference of opinion to me until they were pretty advanced. I would say like pass RCM 9 or 10. And at that point, let's have 3 teachers, talk with 3 different people. Get all of those multiple perspectives, because now hopefully, if with a good teacher, your foundation is really strong and it's a jumping off point, and you're not going to be able to discover your own musical identity as well until you experience lots and lots of even sometimes conflicting advice. So it can be really valuable, but I don't think it should happen until a bit later. Thanks, IB. Let's do a really, really brief practice, and we'll wrap up today with that. What should it be? Vienna says Beethoven. And Vienna said, do you recommend that we have multiple teachers once you get past level 9, 10? Yeah, you know, your primary teacher needs to really be okay with that, and a lot of them aren't. So you don't want to ruin a relationship, especially a good relationship with the teacher. And both teachers, if you have two teachers, both teachers need to understand enough of a variety of approaches to see the merit in different ways of playing the same thing. So in order to do this well, you have to be okay with receiving conflicting advice, and your two teachers, if you have two, also need to be okay with expecting things that they say to be potentially contradicted, and working through that. So music becomes less about telling a student what the approach is and more discussing. Well, if you approach from this side, which maybe is my preference, what are the pros and cons? And if you approach from this other side, which is not my preference, but it's your other teacher's, what are the pros and cons? And discuss it, and then talk about it, experience it, and then start to decide which one do you prefer. Because when you execute it as with conviction and with authority, even if it's the opposite of the advice I gave, I'm still going to like it, and it's still going to be really great. But you got to have the right student, the right two teachers or multiple teachers. So just be careful of that. Okay, Vienna asked for some Beethoven. Let's play. Okay. Who can name the piece? This is not the first bar of the piece, by the way. I haven't played this in years, so it will be very rusty, which means there'll be great opportunity and lots of things to work on. I'm going to run through 4 bars. That's going to be my chunk. We don't have a lot of time. I'm going to play the first 4 bars of this page, and I want all of you who listen to whatever happens in the coming performance of those 4 bars, tell me what it is that should be worked on first. Okay. Okay. Type it in. What is the first thing that needs to be worked on? I can't go on until we identify what it is. Vienna said you didn't hear it. Restless guitar. Dynamics. There was stuff way more fundamental than dynamics. The only dynamic marked is forte. I played the 2-note slurs that are marked on the score. I didn't play the decrescendo to piano in the 3rd bar. Risha, are the notes and rhythms correct? No, I didn't play everything correctly. I missed a couple notes in the middle of measure 2. And I also messed up the fingering in measures 3 and 4. And I didn't have a relaxed enough gesture. I'm putting the gesture at the most fundamental level. I didn't have a relaxed enough gesture through bars 1 and 2 and the release of the 2-note slurs. So my first job, even though people paid attention to, I didn't drop to piano in bar 3. Good. That's not the problem, the first problem that needs to be solved. The first problem is I need to relax more through the gestures in 1 and 2. I need to get the notes right, and I need to get the correct fingering. I like the fingering that's written in bars 3 and 4 in the left hand. I need to fix all that before I worry about what the dynamic is. So I'm going to start to go through it again, and I'll kind of talk my way through the process. So here we go. Okay, I fixed notes in the left hand in 2, but I missed an octave in the right. So let's get that. Wrong fingering in the left hand, so I need to change that. I need to do the left hand by itself. Let's do that again. I don't think I've ever played it with this fingering, so. Let's try both hands together. Better. Notice, even though I'm working on fingering, I'm still playing all of the 2-note slurs, and I'm letting off the pedal. So I continuously hear the correct expression and the correct articulation there. Let's do it again. Some of the fingering I don't like, actually. I like the last bit, but yeah, I want to change that, so I'm going to change it right away. Hey, sword fighter. I'm taking now a little bit of a rhythmic grouping, because in each group of 3 notes, I can play through the fingering I want in the left hand. And then I need time right now to still think about how I'm changing from what's on the page. I don't like that. To something different. 1, 3. That's good. That's going to be caught with the pedal, so I'm not worried about that. I'm working on the gesture, the release of the wrists, and being free, and playing with the fingering I really intend in the left. Let's try to put the rhythm back, but a little slower under tempo. Good. I need to do 3 more reps of that. So here we go. Let's continue and bridge the gap. Okay, let's do it again. Same purpose. There's no reason to not crescendo in bar 4. This should not stay piano. There's a phrase there. So a lot of people were commenting on subito forte, and then there was no drop to piano. Correct. So I need to work on that, but that still needs shape. So it's going to come out of piano. Good. Let's do it again. Good. So tempo is starting to speed up. Okay. So I haven't asked a question in a while. I fixed the first problems. Let me play it again. What's the next issue that needs to get fixed? Just the same 4 bars. My pleasure, piano. Most of that, the last, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, was on 2 bars. Great. I played the 4 again. What do we need to fix now? What's the most important thing? Yes, restless guitar. I was far more relaxed than I started the day. I was happy with that. I have two things in mind. Any ideas? Not speed yet, Vienna. In fact, the playthrough I just did was faster than all of the repetitions I gave. It was kind of a test. Restless guitar. Phrasing, inflection was pretty good in the last run through. It does need a little bit more work, but it wasn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem was that I missed a note. I missed that one and the thumb. And I didn't like the clarity of my pedaling through bars 3 and 4. So Nancy, pedal okay. Good. Good. Okay, so I need to make sure I'm getting that octave. In fact, all of the octaves that I'm still striking the thumb. So let's slow down. And then, again, I don't take the pedaling that's here, I don't think. I pedal almost every quarter note, not every 2 quarter notes. So let's do it again. Work on the same thing. Thumb, thumb, thumb. Now more clean pedal. Good. Notice the tempo. Notice the dynamic. Thumb, 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 thumb. Drop. Clean, 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 clean. Let's try it more in tempo. 2. Not bad. Let's do it again. Okay. I'm going to try a performance. Let's do one more go through of this. So I'm going to play the 4 bars again at a higher tempo. What's going to go wrong and what needs to be fixed this time. Is the restless, you said, is the score enough for me to quickly notice the missing or wrong notes? It's not because they're on the score. It's because I know that the note should be there. And I just did before that, I just did a bunch of repetitions where the note was there. So I felt that my thumb didn't actually hit the bottom of the key. And I noticed that, even though it was only 1 note in 4 measures. So it's a combination. The note itself, restless guitar, isn't very obvious because it's an octave, and it's kind of ringing a little bit from the previous one. So the fact that the 1 note was missing sonically wasn't the cue in. It was that the gesture wasn't correct that allowed me to feel I didn't make contact with the bottom of the key for that 1 pitch. Okay, any ideas? Vienna said pedal. The pedal was pretty good. I don't think that's a problem. The pedal, well, it shouldn't be. That's no pedal. It shouldn't be that clean. That's not correct. It should be. That's all very clean. That's very good pedaling. Next up is the intention behind the two-note slur is not correct. So this should have more drive forward. Almost crescendo. And it should even lean slightly into a faster rhythm than eighths. Not sixteenths. Not that. But it should have a push to the downbeat that I don't have right now. That's better. Yeah, that's better. That was not good. That's too much of a drop in dynamic. I don't know if that drop, the subito forte and the drop to piano is in Beethoven's score in measure 3. I would have to get out my text. This is not that. And look at that. Because the fact that we land subito forte, that's the SF in bar 3, and it's pedaled, and the tempo is half note, is 132, means there is very little change that we can make if we stay in tempo. There's very little dynamic change we can drop to and still have the line project and still be heard. And we can't just simply release the pedal. Even if we do that, listen to how much the left hand, the F and the A flat are ringing. If I truly drop that D and E flat to piano, you can't hear them because of the ring in the left hand. It's too much. So the dynamic has to be shaped really carefully and not be a true piano, because if it is, it'll be lost under the accent. Okay, so that's a little more analysis. So the past couple repetitions, I've worked on that propulsion to the downbeat now. That's again with a purposeful rhythmic pause to help accentuate it. And then I can't say everything that I'm thinking fast enough, but just enough drop in dynamic to show a new shape, but it can't be piano because of the reasons we just talked about. So it has to be really controlled, softer, but not lost. And then show a shape for the phrase to our landing on the downbeat. And then we would continue from there. So that was too blurry. That was okay. Let's try it again. I'm also bringing out the fifth finger on all those octaves. That last one was okay. It's not clear enough in bars 1 and 2. It's not clear enough. Yeah, IB, you said half pedal. I'm doing that actually, because if you listen from here, I'll do it in slow motion. That's the pedaling I'm taking. And I'm doing a little bit more clearing than that, but you hear how the resonance is going away. It's about like that. That's the pedaling I'm taking. And at full tempo, there's a little bit of clarity and a little bit of sustain. There's a balance between the two. Better? I mean, that was not good. I need to do it better. Yeah. So all of those pedals in bars 3 and 4, I said I was pedaling every quarter note earlier. What it really is about a 3/4 pedal releasing to a 1/4 pedal. It's back to a 3/4. So I'm almost flutter pedaling all of those to try to find the clarity there. Okay, so we spent about 20 minutes together on these 4 bars. Let's talk about the process, because that's how we can all learn from it. The first thing was that we tackled the fundamental stuff. What were the wrong notes I played in my review of the bar? I hadn't played those 4 measures in 2 or 3 years, so they weren't quite like sight reading, but they were not good. So I had to identify where all the wrong notes were. I didn't have any wrong rhythms because I know how the piece sounds. I didn't really need to read the rhythm. Secondly, while we identified the wrong notes, we identified what were the wrong gestures that were made, because the gesture is really important to help us to be able to speed up later in the future. So the gesture was not free enough. So I needed to work on freedom. I also needed to work on reinforcing the fingering that I wanted to use across all of the measures. So we're calling those the fundamental things. Get all the notes, get the gesture, show the articulation. It's the stuff that's basically most of the stuff that's on the page, right? Pay attention to those things. The gesture's not on the page, but slightly given to us by the 2-note slur. After we did that, then I found in a run-through, there was something that I didn't reinforce well enough. It was the thumb in the right hand I missed in a run-through. So I needed to go back and be more purposeful about feeling and understanding where the thumb was. And then I was working on more clarity and a bigger drop in dynamic in bars 3 and 4 simultaneously with that, because they happen at different points in the piece, different points in these 4 bars. So I could take this small chunk and I could say, well, at one point I'm working on reinforcing my understanding and feeling of the thumb with the octave. And later in the phrase, I'm working on something different. And it's a short enough phrase that I can accomplish that. Then we started talking about more musical things, like what's the intention? This is a really excited part of the piece. It's the first time we hear this allegro. It's like the carriage pulling away. Vienna, you said it perfectly. It's the farewell, right? This is a really joyful moment. And to express more of that joy, I need more impetus leading to the downbeat, the strong beat. And so then I was working on the things that were already reinforced, the gesture, the fingering, those have to be there so that I can stop thinking about them and work on the intention under the notes. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. That was even better. And then, simultaneous with that, working on that impetus, again, in the second half of the phrase, because it was so different, working on pedaling and coming to that understanding of what's on the score, that the drop in dynamic on the score cannot be taken literally because of the reasons that we found. If we play subito forte and drop to piano, the tempo is too fast to do it with pedal, to allow it to happen with pedal. We can't make a subito piano because that takes time and it pulls us out of tempo. So we have to make some of that shape. It can't be as extreme. We have to show it a little less and still allow a phrase to happen afterward. Yeah. Restless Guitar, you said how many more errors should be there on the first run to get the need of the smaller chunk, 2 instead of 4 bars? Good question. You kind of saw that actually, because when I started this, I went and only chunked the first 2 bars because there were pretty extensive problems. I was working on the fingering. I tried to read the fingering that was on the page. I discovered I didn't like it, and it wasn't actually how I learned the piece when I've performed it in the past. So it was causing even more confusion for my hand. So I needed to rediscover the fingering that I had used previously. I did that, and that was all just working 2 bars. So call those errors. How many errors should there be? Because the fingering was incorrect on almost every note in the left hand, I would call that 8 errors. That's a lot of errors. That's a lot to correct in just 2 bars. If I was less experienced, that would even be go back to 1 bar and feel this. And then can we just do the second bar? And do it slowly and under tempo. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We can always do this more often on streams. I think it's really enlightening. It's not really practice time for me because I'd be making these decisions really, really quickly if I was on my own. But it's a great opportunity to listen and to reflect on what we're hearing and then talk about, well, what actually should be changed, what's next, in order to build something kind of from the ground up that's solid and that really works. And the steps that we go through, there were all sorts of practice tools that we didn't use in this because they weren't needed. The practice tool, there were two, basically. Three, we'll call it three. There were three that were used. One, the common one, the tempo was slowed down. The second one was a brief use of rhythmic groupings to help give the brain and the gesture time to reset, to reactivate before it was really understood. So rhythmic groupings was a second tool. And the third tool that was used was paying attention to and feeling gesture. Often if we're reading the notes off the page or we're learning something, right, it can be, and we just play, and we're just getting the notes right. And we're not going to ever play like that. So coming to the understanding of even the first chord, I like to play it with more of a ringing sound so that I built in the gesture to that, almost like a bell, which then I like how it sets me up to release all the rest. So three things: tempo, slowing down, but speeding up to test things out. We used rhythmic groupings and then a focus on gesture. Thanks, Vienna. Thanks everybody for being here. If you haven't given the video a thumbs up, please give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, I hope that you found that last 20 minutes helpful. Oh, good stuff. Absolutely, Bjorn. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. This type of practice stuff I do all the time in my members group, Next Level Pianist Academy. You can find the link below. We do practice audits with the group where we talk about the same stuff, and I practice and I narrate the whole process, and it's on recording, or you can join live, where I talk through what should be done and kind of why I'm working on it. This was fun though, because you guys got to say what you thought needed to be worked on, which really keeps you engaged in the process. Restless guitar. The two note slur is truly a sound, but we can get very close to that sound quickly with the right gesture, with the right wrist gesture. But really, it's a tone. Bottom. It's that. Bottom. Emphasis to no emphasis. Bottom bum. So the articulation of this piece dictates bada bum, bada bum, bada bum. And that comes from the two note slur. Yeah, good question. Okay. Hey, have a great rest of your week. Our next stream is not in 2 weeks this time. It will be the 12th of August. No stream on the 29th. It's the 5th week of the month. We always do these streams, remember, on the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month. So no stream on the 29th of July, no stream on the 5th of August, but we do have one on the 12th. I will hope to see all of you then, okay? All right, thanks again for being here. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Take care. Practice smarter and harder. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.